Kofi Dotse, Harriet Owala. Let's give a hand to them as they take the stage and present for the next 10 minutes.
Thank you so much. So I bring you greetings from Ghana. My name is Kofi Dotse, and I'm here with Harriet. I'll say one thing. Harriet has been one of the people that really looked up to, starting off being a travel writer, I think 2 to 3 years now. And she's really inspired me because from where I come from, we don't really have people who are really up in telling our stories with regards to, travel stories. And so she brought up this idea, to pitch this, this story because we've realized people think the press trips are fun, they look so cool, you get to travel all the time, but they don't get to see the behind the scenes, okay? They don't get to see the tears. They don't get to see what really goes into, the nitty-gritties when it comes to getting your story out there, especially when it comes to stories from Africa. So we just really want to just highlight some of the issues that we have been experiencing, over the years, and, get to see how we have actually making strides within that space, and then how the future looks like when it comes to, storytelling, especially within the travel space in Africa. So quickly, our topic today is who tells Africa's story, the politics of destination branding in Africa. So we'll quickly go into that, but I'll let Harriet introduce herself quickly, and then we can go right into the story, yeah.
So, good morning, guys. My name is Harriet Owala. I'm a travel journalist in this country, Kenya. I've been a travel journalist for the past 10 years. So I've written both in the local space and the international space. So I have like a kind of a brief background on what it takes, like what you can really experience as a local journalist and also as an international journalist. And that's what I'm going to present today.
Harriet is really big, by the way, so you guys give her a hand of applause, yeah. So who owns the African narrative? Yeah, so over the years, we've realized that as, African storytellers or journalists, we can see, freelance writers, storytellers basically, we've realized that when it comes to, the tourism space, travel, we realize that over the years, the space has been dominated by the West, okay? Now, we are not saying this is bad, but my only issue is we need more representation from the continent, okay? Now, I don't know if you guys have heard somewhere that Africa is the future. When it comes to the travel space, from West Africa to East Africa to North Africa to South Africa, Africa is just so beautiful in so many ways. The safaris, the culture, the festival, the music, the food, the fashion, like it's just so rich. And so we being in that, in this space to get to tell these stories, I feel makes us more powerful. And so the fact that most of our stories are like owned by like international media houses, and we don't have enough, African storytellers, manning this space, telling these stories, it just feels quite, bad on the side because we don't get to tell the stories as in when and how they should be told, and told in the right lens. Imagine somebody coming from, the West and then coming to tell the story of how, Kenya evolved, you understand? Or even in Ghana, or maybe even the Kente even culture actually came from. It feels, biased. But if you have somebody from the continent telling our stories, it kind of feels, more powerful. And our stories get told the way they should be told. So I think for us, the fact that it's manned by international media houses, even if you should board a flight from, let's say, wherever I'm coming from to Kenya, even our in-flight magazines, the publishing media houses are owned by the West. We don't have our own, publishing houses from Africa. Most of the editors that we pitch our stories to are from the West, because we don't have a lot of our guys, being at the forefront for our stories getting told. So we really want to just highlight some of the problems this has led to, with regards to retelling our stories. I don't know if Harriet can also talk on some of these things.
Yeah, the fact that most of our travel publications are actually owned by the West, it's not really a bad thing because at least they've showcased the continent, they've showcased the destinations, they've made us know like which places to travel to, what's really like affecting, the issues affecting Africa. But this is usually curated to the Western audience. So that means like what the experiences that we're having like as Africans, or some of the destinations or the experiences that us Africans can enjoy normally don't get to reach the Western, normally don't get to reach like the masses that it should reach. So that it by itself means that they set the tone. They set, even the taste of what we as Africans can know as travel. They set to know what really is like the experience. And this is usually in mostly luxury experience. So that is the issue that like that is how deep it affects not just the media space but also the industry by itself, because by the end of the day countries also need like revenue, and tourism is one of the main sources of getting money. And also the media space developing now us like local people who can also see themselves as writers. That also affects that. So
Yeah, so I really want to mention one thing that I observed. I remember when I was pitching a story to a certain big publication that tells African stories, majorly to the West, and the editor is actually white. I'm not saying it's bad. I mean, for me, I feel the West has a lot of experience when it comes to the travel space. So I mean, don't think it's bad, but I think for me, it's about having more representation. So I remember pitching a story from Ghana, and then he mentioned that this story is going to, for a white, audience within the age bracket of I think from 35 to about 50. So the story has to go in a certain way. Now, this is me crafting a story that is originally Ghanaian. Has it been told before? So if now I now have to retweak the angle to satisfy that demographic, then I'm doing myself a disfavor because I'm not really getting to tell the story from an original context. So then again, it also boils down to the fact that I also feel we haven't developed our local space to kind of like enjoy our own stories. How many African countries actually like get to tell their own African stories when it comes to travel? It's always the West that kind of buy our stories. Now they will tell you the West actually has the buying power. They can afford the safaris, they can afford the luxury trips and all that. But have we actually developed our domestic space to actually get our own people to actually enjoy those stories? So realize that we keep going round and round in circles. You pitch the stories, they get to tell you this is how it's supposed to be, this is how it's supposed to look and all that, because they have the purchasing power. So until we ourselves reorient ourselves, to kind of like get to that space where we kind of buy into our own stories, it's not going to end. It's going to keep happening all the time. I don't know if Harriet can also touch on
yeah, I want
your
to touch
experiences.
on also the experience opportunities. You'll find that if you, because I have the experience of being both an international and local journalist. So if I lean on my international journalist space, I'll get more opportunities than if I say I'm just writing for my local newspaper. So that means that the people, if you're an international journalist, you'll find more access to even opportunities like tourism events. You'll find more access to even have interviews with
They
people
even get
in
paid
the
more.
space.
Don't forget.
Even
They get paid more.
you get paid more. So it affects even how the access to the story itself. So that's why I say it's nice when we have more representation, or even like the local journalists are even got it.
I've even had even countless occasions where there's a story about Africa, and then they need an African storyteller to tell that story. But because they prefer maybe someone from the diaspora who has African descent, then they're giving more priority because, okay, well, they're international and they're recognized. Then they prefer to actually use those guys. But on some good occasions, I've had some of these journalists actually reached out to me because I live here, I grew up here, and I understand the space. So if I get to tell the story, it's richer, it's original. But then on a larger, space, realize that most of the times, those guys, out there get to tell our stories. And to some extent, it doesn't feel right because we live here all the time and we actually understand this space. So I think if you're giving more opportunities to African writers, to tell our stories, you're empowering us, to do more. I really want us to touch on the fact that there's a lot of, deprioritization of our stories. Sometimes even on local newspapers, realize that stories about politics get more, hype. You don't really get to see stories about travel in the space. It's more about politics. And for you, you have actually done a lot of writing in the local newspapers. So you can actually even share your experience, if you don't mind.
So I recall last year, the local newspaper where I have now the travel column, actually decided to restructure the paper to have more political stories. And because they felt like travel was more leisure. And that's also one of the problems that we have with travel journalism, is that people consider it as a leisure more than it's actually, it can also stand on its own. So you have to lean on other sectors for it to bear more weight and for it to be relevant. And which is a problem because tourism is one of, it employs so many people. So anything that affects tourism actually affects the economy of countries. So my push is always that travel journalism really must have, like it really must get the recognition that it has. Because in the West, it's actually a strong sector and, people there are really doing a lot of things. So why can't it also be like a strong sector here in Africa? Yeah.
Yeah, I think generally for me, the opportunities are very, very limited when it comes to, African storytellers. For me, sometimes for your pitch to get accepted, like it has to happen by luck. You pitch 30, 40 editors, and the best you can even get is a no. Sometimes even if you even get approved, they might even tell, okay, this is what we are offering you. There's no room for negotiation. And it doesn't matter if you have like over 20 years of experience. If they're paying you 30 cents per word, that is what you get. And you have no way to actually, request for more. If you decide to actually ask for more, they might trash your story. So you see how difficult this thing is. But if you're able to build our own spaces, this will actually help. I want to just highlight some case studies we've observed over the years. We've seen, we've had issues of even powerful, storytellers like Larry Wadimaya have issues when it comes to, trying to access, space within the continent, applying for visas, just having the ease of travel. You see so many issues. We've seen ISHO speech come to Africa from the West, to publish stories, within the continent. And you realize that even our own policymakers and government don't even know we have these spaces in Africa. For example, even our shea butter space, you realize that even our leaders don't even know we actually produce a lot of shea butter. But he came down to, to share. And now it all boils down to the fact that a lot of the people from the West actually have a say in what happens in our country. So I don't know if you can also touch on some of these issues.
When it comes to ISHO Speed, that was it was an eye-opener because he came to show us that social media is actually the way forward to go. That actually you can use social media to bypass the media to showcase what Africa is all about. But also, it took a person from the West to come and tell us and validate that Africa is really a continent worthy to be explored. So that too, it's also, I can say it's more like a two-way thing, because why does it have to take the West? And they have they have the advantage of resources, they have the advantage of the algorithms working for them. So there I can say it's more of a 50-50. Yeah.
We're not pushing our own people, and that's actually fast. So quickly looking to the future, what do you think we can actually do to find a way to make our voices heard? We realize that we need to develop platforms for Africans by Africans. We need to if it has to be magazines, if it has to be digital platforms, we need to, find a way to, call on our government to actually sponsor and invest in some of these spaces to help us, tell our authentic stories. It doesn't always have to be, somebody out there, getting to call the shots. I think that would help. And so because of this, myself and Harriet are actually putting together a resource to have a session where Africans can actually break into the travel media space. So you can actually get in touch with us maybe right after this, session to get to know more of that. But I think this should be some of the issues we've been facing over the years. And we are still facing these issues. So maybe sometime in the future, we might get some studies. But for now, this is what we've observed. So I really want to say thank you for this opportunity in hearing our story when it comes to, the politics of destination branding in Africa. And yeah, I think this has really been a good session. Thank you, Harriet, for your time. And
thank you, Kofi.
That's been awesome. Yeah.